So example 3 is much like example 2a, except we're actually given the visual, so we can have some affirmation from that. Looking at example A here, I first want to identify my vertex, which is at +5 and -4. I also want to pick out at least one other point that I can use to then solve for A. So in this case, I'm going to use this point right here. Point P is going to be at 2 and -1. From here, it's the exact same process. So if you want to pause the video and give it a shot on your own, remember you're always writing in vertex form because that's the only way we've really talked about in class so far. And vertex form looks like this. So pause the video, give it a shot, see if you can do it on your own. We know that our vertex gives us P and Q. So immediately I can plug in those values. X minus 5 squared minus 4. Using this point, and its coordinates x and y, I can then solve for A. So -1 equals A times 2 minus 5 squared minus 4. So I can move the 4 over, and that gives me 3 equals 2 minus 5 is -3, squared is 9. So I've got 9a equals 3, divide by 9, gives me a fraction that I can reduce, so a is 1/3. Now that I know a, and I've started filling in my equation, or filled in p and q, now I can write my final answer. Y equals 1/3 x minus 5 squared minus 4. And just to look at my graph, I can say that I can pretty much agree with that. It looks like a pretty wide parabola, so having a fraction as my a-value makes sense. And my vertex is at +5 and -4, which is just what my equation describes. Same process for B, just heads up. We already know something about my a-value. It's negative because it's opening downwards. So something to watch for is when you're solving for A, if you get a positive value, we've done something wrong somewhere. Again, I'm going to identify my vertex. It's going to be 0 and 3. I'm going to choose a point at 1 and 1. And we're going to go from here. So y equals ax minus 0. So I'm not actually going to include that in my final part, but just for peace of mind while I'm starting out, 0 goes in the place of p. When I go to plug in my x and my y values, that 0 might disappear. So I've got 1 equals a. 1 minus 0 is just 1, so I'm not even going to bother writing the 0, plus 3. So subtract 3, -2 equals a times 1, or just -2 equals a. So my final answer is going to be y equals -2 x squared plus 3. And again, notice that my original piece, which had that -0, I'm not going to write that because subtracting 0 doesn't do anything. Finally, I'll put a box around it. And in comparison, this graph looks narrower than this graph. That makes sense since it's a coefficient of 2 instead of a third. And it's opening downward, it's negative, so everything looks like I'm good to go.